this
Yeah.
elitist, globalist, self-entitled cabal that has infiltrated all of our countries. But I don't think people know enough about what happened on the ground in Sweden and what you've
Yeah.
seen happen over the years. That is a
Yeah.
warning sign to all of us. So tell me a little bit about your background a little, and then how you started to connect the dots.
Yeah, I'm a journalist. I started the School of Journalism when I was 18, 19 years old. And I just found out when I came there, I knew nothing about journalism, but I just found out this is my thing. I just loved it. And I wanted to, free the innocent from prison. I wanted to get the politicians who were crooked and all that stuff. And I realized after a year or so that most of my colleagues, they were not very interested in finding the truth and, standing up for all these things that they just thought it was a fun job. It was quite good pay and you were doing fun stuff. But I have always tried to do, things that nobody else wrote about. I did a big story in the beginning of the 90s about all these men who were falsely accused of having had sex with their own children. It was like it was like a panic. Sweat started in the US and then it came to Europe, and there were so many men who were wrongly convicted without evidence, totally innocent, and I did become very popular, especially among my female colleagues at the newspaper where I worked, because they thought we shouldn't write about these things. Why shouldn't we do that? Are we not living in a justice society? Don't we all agree that it's better to let 10 guilty men go free than putting one innocent man in prison? No, they thought it was the opposite way. If it didn't matter to them if 10 innocent people got into jail as long as the one that was guilty could be sentenced. Wow. That was a real shocker for me. So that was the first time I did something that my colleagues didn't like. And then I just, I just been going on like this. And I started to freelance in 1999. So I didn't work in the newsroom for like 10 years. And when I came back to the biggest newspaper in Sweden called Aftonbladet, that was a shock. That was a shock to see that all the reporters, they had nothing to say. The bosses decided everything. You are going to write about this. This is the headline, and you are going to call this and this and this and this person, and they're going to say this.
Right.
And I saw the young reporters coming back saying, well, they didn't say that. Well, you will have to phone 10 more people.
Right.
And I was in shock. This is not what I want to do. So I just quit. And then since then, 2011, something like that, I have been doing my own stuff in alternative media, different. We had a newspaper, and then now I have my YouTube channel with my friend and colleague, Maria Selander.
Right. And I'm like you. I started out also in journalism school where we were actually taught you had to have actual sources that to back up everything, 2 of them at least. And that, your job was to inform the public about corruption, not be complicit. And you and I both watched around the same time I went into corporate too, that you did. And I went out and then in, and then I saw, wait a minute, it's all controlled. It's all propaganda. Who are the puppet masters? Who's at the top here in America right now? I believe that it's the bankers and the Wall Street guys. America right now, in my opinion, is being run by a billionaire, trillionaire oligarchy that is really global and has really affected your country too. And the first thing I want to say about what you said about the men is I was in Hollywood for 16 years, and I saw that Me Too movement come in. Too, which I thought brought down a lot of men that did not deserve it. A couple that I know in real life, and again in America and in your country as well, all of our countries, it's gotten to innocent until proven guilty is no longer. It is you are guilty, and as soon as the smear merchants that run the media that are in on it, complicit, get involved, they destroy anyone and anything they can that gets in the way of their narrative. And the Me Too movement has evolved into, I think, this attack on men, on masculinity, on traditional roles, on, it started also back at the same time well, before that, when I was in LA, the LGBTQ, the pedophilia agenda, the destruction of the family, the sexualization, especially of young girls, and all of this stuff. And what we saw over the years was the slow infiltration of the borders and of these groups of migrant, mainly men, all over, coming through. At this point, I read a number this morning. Since Joe Biden came in, 5 million undocumented immigrants from all over the world have come through our border freely. 100,000 children, unaccompanied minors that are just trafficked, have disappeared into America. Now, when did this start in Sweden? Because what I saw in your work should be a wake-up call to every American and everyone on this planet that the open society, the Catholic charities, and these billionaires are flooding our countries on purpose. So tell me about your journey on that.
Yeah, when I don't remember when this was, but I didn't know about it when it happened. In 1975, I was 15 years old, so I wasn't sort of into politics and all that stuff. The Swedish parliament, they took a decision unanimously that Sweden was not going to be a Swedish country anymore. It was going to be a multicultural country.
Like here, yeah.
All of them voted yes. All of them. 349 people in the parliament voted yes.
Wow.
Okay, I think that many of them, they had no idea what they were doing. They just thought it sounded nice. I mean, how could Sweden be anything but Swedish? That will never happen. So let's say that we are multicultural. That's nice. That's welcoming. We are such good people, Swedes. We are so nice, Yeah. But I have now found out that, the one who was in charge of this, the prime minister at the time, Olof Palme, he had been to the Bilderberg group several times before 1975. So he knew exactly what he was doing. And since then, Swedes have been to the Bilderberg group meeting every year. A lot of politicians from left to right, they don't discriminate.
Same with here. Right on.
They want all of them. And around at first, not so much happened. We had some immigration, like in the 90s from former Yugoslavia and so on. We had some problems, but not like when it really started was around the millennium. Then they just opened the floodgates. And that was a conservative prime minister. He made a deal with the Green Party because he was so angry that the Sweden Democrats had gotten into parliament. That was in 2010.
Wow.
He was so angry that they came into parliament, and they are the party that wants to stop this mass immigration and also send some people back, the ones who are here illegal and the criminals and all that stuff, So he hated them, this conservative prime minister, Fredrik Reinfeldt. He made a deal with the Green Party that just opened the floodgates. And why did he do that? That is so strange, because who are benefiting from these people?
Right.
It's the Social Democrats, because they all vote for the Social Democrats.
Right.
So actually, I've heard some immigrants say, well, social welfare you get from the Social Democrats. You can hear that by the name, Yeah, it's actually true.
Understand?
Yeah. So they vote like, we see these areas where so many, especially Muslim immigrants live. They vote like up to 80-90% for the Social Democrats. So this conservative prime minister, he was actually importing people who were never going to vote for his party.
Right. Yeah, that's where we are here. That's where we are here. And I live right across from the Catholic Charities administration building in Manhattan. And over the last week, everyone in my neighborhood notices about 300 mostly men from who knows where. A lot of them look Muslim to me, but coming through our southern border, they're not being stopped. They're being bussed up to New York. They're being processed. They're being given SNAP cards, which is food cards, for $500 on them, loaded up. They're being given temporary Medicaid cards. They're being given housing and keys. The ones that come with children, they're being given forms to enroll their kids in New York City schools. They're being given clothes and stuff. And this is Catholic Charities here. I know the Open Society Foundation, George Soros's worldwide foundation for open borders, is complicit. The UN, of course, complicit. And we are having that here, and it's the same thing. They're also importing voters because they're giving them temporary IDs, and they've made it in a lot of blue states, my state, New York, that they can vote. And here's the story: this is becoming a dystopian nightmare. Yeah. I have some homeless friends. I've tried to help them. They want nothing to do with help from the government. They're proud men. They live on the street by choice. But I will tell you, they are saying that they are sitting ducks, that these marauding groups of illegals and of kids, basically, scarily enough, are terrorizing people all over the city. Most people don't even want to go out after 10 p.m. When I grew up in Manhattan, you'd go out through 2 a.m. and not worry about it. Our cops have been, demoralized. They have no power. Is this what's going on there? Because what I'm seeing there is a lot of crime, a lot of gangs. What is it like on the ground there now since all of this transpired?
Can I just say one thing first? That I believe that the globalists chose Sweden to be the template for what was going to happen all over the Western world. Why did they choose Sweden? Well, if you have seen State of Sweden, you know that about the Wallenberg family.
I was going to get there, yeah.
The possibility that Sweden is, in fact, the core of the deep state.
Yeah.
The Wallenberg family, they have this motto, to act without being seen. And they have made a good show of it. Not many people know, but everybody knows about the Rothschilds and all the other families, but no one knows about the Wallenberg family. What about them? Well, they own Ericsson, for example, who control the telecom infrastructure in 180 countries, something like that. Everything that's going on around the world, and they have had close contacts with the Social Democrats in Sweden for 100 years. They were quick to see that, this is going to be the leading party, so let's work with them. I think that's one of the reasons that they chose Sweden. Another reason is that we were the most homogenous country in Europe, and I think that they thought that would be a challenge. Let's take Sweden, where it's like 99% Swedes who live, and just flood them with people from all over the world, and let's see what happens.
Yep. I feel that way about Sweden. I keep telling people that's what they're doing in New York City. I feel like New York City, right when COVID hit, you had Cuomo come on stage with two of the worst globalists, Eric Schmidt and Bill Gates, and say they were reimagining New York. And we're like, wait, it was 2 weeks to stop the spread. And from that day on, it has been the controlled demolition of New York City. And I think not for the same reason. I think that it's some kind of prize to destroy New York City from the inside out. And that is exactly what they've done. And they are not stopping until we stop them. But I feel the same way. Now, the Wallenberg family and Ericsson, because Ericsson has been outed multiple times and called out, and with billions of dollars in fines that they never seem to have to pay. This Wallenberg family, and there's also Queen Beatrix that nobody pays attention to. I don't know where she went, but she was very involved. But these are the same people that go to Bilderberg and that are involved with the BIS and the private Western Central Bank, and at the very top, because like you're saying, we all know the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers because they don't hide it. Their families don't hide it. And the younger generations of those families don't seem to have the same code of silence. They're more arrogant. They want to be in your face. The Wallenbergs have done a very good job. Now, do they change their last names like the other secret families, or they just stay in the shadows?
They just stay in the shadows. But when Sweden suddenly wanted to go into NATO, a couple of months ago,
I know.
It's just so stupid. But what happened? I think that we did it because Finland decided to do it, because Finland is our partner in the defense. So when they said they wanted to go into NATO, we had to do it too. But anyway, that our prime minister, she went to Helsinki to meet with the Finnish prime minister, and who accompanied her? And Mr. Wallenberg. Isn't that strange? Why was he there? And when one of the elderly Wallenbergs died a couple of years ago, who was at his funeral? The whole royal family.
Right. Right. Yeah.
They are top notch.
Right. Yeah. I think they're at the very, very top. And that's the thing we have to remember. This is a small cabal of people that have usurped the entire world, and they hoard the money. What I see when I look at this Bank of International Settlements, which I'm sure they're involved there too, we're talking about quadrillions of dollars that these people are sitting on while they tax us, while they take our money, while they're always pushing, you need to give us more money for the climate emergency or the NATO war to entrap humanity into a militarized world government. This is really what I believe is going on. And of course, the Wallenberg family, and there's other ones, Warburg, there's a whole bunch of families that are in every country. But that family in particular has gotten some kind of pass, it seems, or at least here. And I'm really glad that the state of Sweden and you have brought it up because, again, it's a very small group of people that want to usurp the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, erase God from humanity. Yeah. And now what in your country is it like on the ground? Because not only, see, this is also for Sweden, Finland, and Switzerland. Americans were taught that you guys were neutral. You know, that nothing bad happens there. It's ideal. And when I saw Sweden and Finland go in, the first thing I thought was they got to them. They put in puppet masters in your puppets in your country, like the young global leaders of the World Economic Forum or whatever. And they slowly but surely infiltrated your governments to the point that they're no longer serving the people of Sweden. They're serving the globalists. Is that kind of what's transpired there?
Yeah, I think actually that the whole purpose of this Ukraine war, the whole purpose of fooling the Ukrainians into thinking that they could come into NATO was to trigger Putin to make this special military operation.
100%.
Get Finland and Sweden into NATO. I think this is just stupid, horrible. I think neutrality has served us well. I think we should not go into NATO. So my only hope now is Erdogan in Turkey.
Yeah, I wonder how much money the IMF gave both of them. Finland and Sweden, because it's always the IMF are the ones that do the dirty work, and USAID, unfortunately. And it's scary because you're wide awake. What is the percentage in Sweden at this point that gets that their country has been usurped by a globalist regime?
I'm sorry to say, I don't think a lot of people understand that. The third reason I think that they chose Sweden to start with is that we have such a high trust in society. We trust each other. We trust the media. We trust the authorities. We trust the politicians. So it was very easy to take Sweden, to just tell the Swedes that, well, do you think you are anything special? These people, they're also people. They're nice. They will be good for you. And you don't really, there is no such thing as a Swedish culture.
Oh my God.
What's that? Crazy. Yeah. And we had one, she was the leader of the Social Democratic Party 20 years ago, Mona Sahlin. She actually said in 2000 or 2001, she was in an interview with a Turkish newspaper in Sweden, but Turks in Sweden. Right. And she was asked the question, what is Swedish culture? And you know what she answered? Well, I get that question a lot, and I've been really thinking about it. And my answer is, there is no Swedish culture.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's why we Swedes envy you immigrants, because you have real culture and real tradition. And what do we have? We have corny things like celebrating Midsummer's Eve.
No, you have amazing things. I mean, novels for hundreds of years, Sweden as a backdrop. The craziest part is what makes me so sad about this is what I'm seeing here. I talked to a Border Patrol agent who said back in the day when people wanted to come into America, they came here to become Americans. The influx now, they don't want to be Americans. They want to stay in their culture and language and get all the benefits of being here and the free pass and the free stuff. But as far as being American, proud of America, America culture, they want nothing to do with it. Is that what's going on there too?
Exactly. And that is one of the reasons that many of the Swedes are still sleeping, because they moved into special areas,
Oh,
suburbs.
wow.
And as long as, Somalis went to that place, all the new Somalis who came here, they also wanted to go to that place because they wanted to be near their countrymen, to speak their own language. And as you say, they are not at all interested in becoming a part of the Swedish society, not at all. But the thing with them, living in these special areas, is that the Swedes could hide away from the problems for many, many years, because Swedes live in our areas.
Right.
And now, what is the new thing that the Social Democrats want to do? They think the segregation is so horrible. They want integration. And that is not assimilation. They want is the Swedes go here and the immigrants go there, and we all meet here and we live happily ever after. But the Swedes are not interested in that. We used to be the safest country in Europe. Nothing ever happened here. If there was a murder in the summer, for example, a girl was murdered in the summer, the newspapers wrote about it for months.
Right.
And now there are so many murders every day, every week, that it just flashes by. And it's mostly people, gangs who kill each other.
Right.
But the big thing that Swedes, it's the gang rapes,
right,
of many Swedish women. In 1975, when they took this decision, that's also the year that we started to have the statistics over different crimes. And that year, 1975, there were 300 something reported rapes. Now we have 8,000 or 9,000 reported rapes every year. And the robberies of Swedish children, where they don't rob them because they need their mobile phones or their jackets. They do it to humiliate them.
Right.
They beat them up. They urinate in their mouths. They film it and they put it out on social media.
Right.
This is what's happening to our children. And I am furious that the ones who really refuse to see what we are living in is the women. Right. They are mothers. They are grandmothers. Why do they want to leave this country to their children and grandchildren? Why are the women just voting for Social Democrats, lefties, Green Party, but they hate the conservative parties that want to change this to make Sweden Sweden again?
Right. It's funny. You talk about that time period, the 75 time period. If you go back to 71, that's when the Club of Rome was. I bet the Wallenbergs were there. And the guy who decided that. But this Social Democrat thing, first of all, they're not Democrats. They're socialists, communists. And we have the same problem here. We have a undeniable, I actually started this about 5-6 years ago, going on other people's shows about what I saw happening with pedophilia and child trafficking in Hollywood. And because there it's in your face. And if you're in the business, you see it. There's no not seeing it. And once you see it, you're either a part of it or you get out of there like I did. But I have to tell you, the children disappearing into this country right now, basically you can put in to be a sponsor of a child at the border that's coming in unaccompanied. They're trafficked. People are still under this impression that parents are like handing their kids to coyotes to take them to America. That is not what's going on. No. They disappear into this country. I am shocked that people keep voting, women especially, mothers, grandmothers, for the socialist Democrats that are for the open border, for the sexualization of our children, for the transgender agenda that has taken over this country, and without even thinking about what they're doing to children. And now you have a big issue there, not just with that happening with your children, but with the culture being totally usurped by the same people. And do you have the same thing where you're dealing with a because I believe, first and foremost, do you have a bunch of these NGOs, the Open Society backed, George Soros backed NGOs, National Endowment for Democracy? They all sound like nice human rights campaign. Do you have them in your country?
Oh yeah, we have.
That's where it's coming from.
Yeah. We have this organization. They have a newspaper called Expo, and they are Soros financed.
Of course
And
they
they are like the foot soldiers of the government, the social democratic government. They write about me like at
Good. Yeah,
least
it's a
once a
badge of
month.
honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, just a few weeks ago, they were writing about the book fair that we are having this weekend with alternative media people.
Great.
I think it will be a great success. We've had 4 of them so far, and it's doubled every time. So it's
Right.
very. And they called me on an alternative media profile. What happened? I used to be the queen of the right wing extremists in Sweden. Suddenly, I'm an alternative media profile. Okay.
No, we have it here too. It's shaming, smearing, whatever they can do to have people not take you seriously. I'm sure you're called a conspiracy theorist too. It all comes from our CIA. It's an operation. Ours here is named Media Matters. They're run also by by Soros money and other money. We have a lot of dark money here, but also I'm sure Hansberg Weiss is in your country too. But again, this is a billionaire, trillionaire, honestly, because they're great at hiding their money, and most of them don't pay taxes. We do, but they have usurped all this. But these NGOs, I figured you had them too. Their whole goal is to forward this agenda of globalism. What they don't realize, because you guys have a unique also history with World War II, is that useful idiots that work for these NGOs that are doing the smearing, that are doing the protests, the peaceful protests, the rioting, the dividing of the people by gender, race, color, have it. They never end up doing well in the end. But it's like they stop teaching history about Mao or Stalin or Hitler or any of it. They don't realize that they're operatives, they're pawns in a game where the people at the very top, the Rothschilds, Wallenbergs, Rockefellers, Gates, Soros, whoever it is, the crown, they don't care about them either. No. Yet they're the ones that are deceiving and manipulating and facilitating this against their fellow men.
Absolutely. And we had a couple of people, jumping ship from this leftist NGOs. Yeah. One actually, he was outed because, and that's so interesting. He had been a sexist. I think he even sort of raped some women, and that all the Me Too campaign it was all leftist men, no conservative men. It just doesn't happen. And all the leftist women said, "Oh, this happened to me, and this happened to me," and we conservative women, but what are you talking about? That never happened to me. But one of them, he actually has done some interviews now telling that it was a horrible environment, and now he has become a Christian. And that is something I actually believe, that Sweden was kind of the first country in the Western world to just leave Christianity.
Right.
When I grew up, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she was a Christian, but my father, he was an engineer, and he said, "Oh, don't believe that stuff. You are smart, Ingrid. You have to believe in science." And I was sort of torn between those two, but for a very long time, I thought I was an atheist, and then. I don't know when that happened, but I started to realize that we need Christianity in Sweden. But I thought that all the other people had to become Christians, because I thought, well, I'm a good person anyway. I don't have to become a Christian, and I don't know how to do it. I actually didn't know how do you become a Christian. And then I was invited by this pastor to Israel, and then I met Jesus. Nice. And then I met Jesus on the Sea of Galilee. So
I know all about that. I had my own experience. Yeah. And also when I was young in Israel, it's interesting because this is a real situation. I firmly believe that this is a spiritual battle above the realm of humanity, that we are dealing with good and evil, and that this cabal that hangs out in Davos and in Geneva and Austria and in Manhattan, honestly, and Napa Valley, they all travel in packs to their events. I think that we're dealing with good versus evil and God versus Satan. Is there an element of that in your society that you see on the surface? Because it is very obvious here if you know what to look at.
Yeah, I do see it, and I since a year ago or so, or when that happened to me, when I became Christian, my colleague, she also just just she hugged it too, and she also became, she has always been a bit more believing than me, but then she just, okay, let's do it. So we started a couple of years ago to end all our shows with God bless you.
Oh,
And
no.
things are happening. I get so many emails from people saying, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that you are saying God bless you." And I'm a Christian, but I can't tell people because they think I'm crazy.
Right. Can you
So,
imagine where we are?
yeah, isn't that just
They turned it
horrible?
so upside down. It's an infiltration of evil, and it
Yeah.
goes back. I think it goes all the way back to the top line families, and part of what they do there is it has been this, because I don't believe they can achieve their globalist communist world power thing if there's a God. The
No,
God
no.
has to be replaced.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sweden used to be a very Christian country, a
I thought it
Protestant
was.
country.
Yep.
We were part of, the 30-year-old war when the king,
Right.
Gustav Adolf, when Sweden was a superpower, and he fought the Catholics for 30 years, and then he died before it was over. But Sweden used to be a very, very Christian country, and then suddenly, boom, everything. It happens when the Social Democrats came into
They were
power
all in
like
on it.
100 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
they all agreed on it.
the Social Democrats were smarter than the communists. The communists in Soviet Union, they just said, you are not. We ban all the churches, so they had to do it, in disguise to go to their meetings and so on. But the
Right.
Social Democrats, they just took over the church.
Right. Yeah,
They
I found a
actually
document.
took over the church. The church in Sweden is run by politicians,
Right.
and mostly social democratic politicians.
Yeah, a lot of them here too. Churches and synagogues here have been infiltrated by them. Actually, I found a document by the Socialist Democrats of America that was like demands for Joe Biden, because for them to back him, he's just a puppet. But everyone gave him demands. Black Lives Matter, transgender, LGBTQ. Well, the Socialist Democrats, they call them secular Democrats of America. They totally misinterpret church and state, the whole concept, and turned it upside down to no God. Not that God couldn't. Not really. It was supposed to be that it was to protect the people of God from the government. Well, these guys turned it the other way, as they do, these Luciferian Satanists that run the UN and stuff. And they put out a document, and in the document, it was like one thing after another of just canceling God, canceling Christians. It was very anti-Christian. It was calling Christians white nationalists, saying that they're one and the same. I mean, it was really disgusting. Written by one of the guys who were asking on the January 6th committee that we're dealing with here. But it's all this upside down Luciferian, even like we're talking about the NGOs, they all have good names. In America, we're not a democracy. Democracy is majority rules. There's too many people. And if it was majority rules, it would be DC, California, and New York that would only have the say. And we'd have been given over to the globalists 20 years ago. But it's a constitutional republic. And a lot of people here feel like, that vassal state. The DC isn't even part of America. They have their own rules, like City of London, the Rothschild, Monarch, and the Vatican. These three groups, are not functioning in my estimation for the good of humanity, the good of the people, only for themselves. But we have a real situation here where I think the spotlight is being shown on these people, and we're starting to see the Bilderbergs, the World Economic Forums, the World Health Organization, the UN, which also another that goes back to the same thing with Sweden. The UN's goal was to be put in there to, have cooperation, to end wars, to, help humanity. It's done the exact opposite. We're all just paying for the demise of our countries to this globalist cabal. Now, let me ask you, because we're talking about Christianity and God and stuff. I want to address something that is true and has to be addressed. What I am seeing is that there is a lot of radical Muslims that have gone into your country, that happened here. And then we just took in God knows who from Afghanistan, because it wasn't the good guys. And Obama brought in a lot. that is a real contradiction to your culture and the way your lifestyle there. And it does appear that that group of people, just like in Germany, has become a sector of society in Sweden where you don't go that area because they do not have the same respect for women. They, of course, are into child, brides and a whole bunch of stuff.
Mm.
What happened with the Muslim, and I'm not saying Muslim people, I'm saying radical extremists that came into your country because they probably came from Syria, ISIS, Al Qaeda, the whole war on terror. How is that affecting your society?
It is destroying our society. At the same time that Swedes, they don't care about Christianity, but we're all very, oh, you're a Muslim, we don't want to, we know you can do that and you can do this, and I think that, we have 10 million people in this country.
Wow,
probably more, probably more, but they are here illegally. And I think that we are close to 2 million Muslims in our country now. Swedes are only like between 60 and 70% of the population now. And that happened during my lifetime.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do here. And it's the same. 10,000 people, 10 million people is not a big country. No. And that is a huge influx. I think the same thing is happening here. Honestly, it's the same people funding it. Also, the Catholic Church is very involved in it here. And that's hard to explain unless you know about the Vatican and the Vatican state and all of that. So it is real. But because what I've seen looking it up is the amount of rape and abuse of women in Sweden is very much tied to that influx of immigrants.
Yes, it is. And we actually have studies. The authorities refused to do the studies, but there were so many private people going through, the verdicts from all the courts in Sweden. Right. So finally, they actually had to do it, the authorities. And they also found what these private investigators found, that I think it's like 80% of the assault rapes are done by foreigners, right. Mostly Muslims. We don't say what religion they have, but if we know that they come from Iran, Iraq, right. Syria, Somalia, Afghanistan, we know they are Muslims.
Right.
And so this is actually so horrible. And as I say, it's strange that so many Swedish women don't react. They have been, on the contrary, all these Afghani kids, right. boys that came to Sweden saying that they were 16, 17, because then they all could stay. They didn't go, have to go through the normal procedures. They could stay because they were children. They found out when we finally forced them to check up how old they were, because there are things you can look at, teeth and knees and on all that stuff. Some of them were even 40 years old, and they put them in high school with 13-year-old girls. It's just crazy. And this is Sweden for you. This is what I've been fighting now for almost 10, 15 years, trying to make people see the truth. But Swedes are so nice, and we cannot send people away from here. That would be very hard. And what about the children? Their children, they are born here. It is really so difficult to make people see the truth. I sometimes say, do you all need to get raped by a foreigner before you understand, or your daughter being raped?
Yeah. Look at Tommy Robinson in London. He's been persecuted left and right about it coming out on the rape gangs. His documentaries are horrifying. We know that it's happened all over Germany. It's because your puppet masters that were placed in your countries are in on it. They're in on the destruction of all of our countries. Open society means what it says, that there is no borders, language, culture. There is no, inalienable rights, no constitution, no Bill of Rights. And it's very sad, because I sometimes feel the same way, because it's happening here, that a lot of people coming across that border are saying that, because they don't have ID, are saying that they're way younger than they are. They're finding, again, here, 40-year-old men in high schools. And again, here the same thing. Nobody wants to say it. I hate that we have to qualify and say, there's good Muslims, of course, but that's not who we're talking about. There are also born and bred men that have zero respect for women, think women are property, think children could be mutilated and raped, and that's or married at 8 years old. It's just part of that culture, and to deny it is to our own demise. But that's why not assimilating, because there must be no-go zones in your country like there are in London.
Yeah, I started to call them out of control areas.
Exactly.
I didn't came up. There was another journalist, another alternative journalist, who made that up, because they call they call it vulnerable areas. The politicians call them vulnerable areas, and he said out of control areas.
Your vulnerable area.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened now? A couple of months ago in Easter, there was this Danish politician, Rasmus Paludan, who burns the Quran, and he's a Swedish citizen too, so he wants to get into parliament here. He will not do that, but anyway, he's sort of being out and having meetings, and he burnt the Quran in several different Swedish cities during the Easter holiday. And what happened? Because that was also during Ramadan, the last days of Ramadan.
I think I read about it here.
Yeah. And it was crazy, the violence. He wasn't even there most of the times, because the police already saw that, oh my God, we can't take you in there. So he was in a different place. But the Muslims living there, not all of them, of course, but enough of them were throwing big rocks at the police. They beat up the police officers. They took their cars and they set them to fire, and it was just crazy. And all the country was in an uproar. What is going on? But whose fault was it? It was, of course, the Danish politician.
Right. It's funny. I was going to just ask you, have your police been demoralized and kind of disempowered like we have? The defund the police thing, I think, is an international thing as well. Is that going on? How are the police where you are?
Not really defund the police, because the problem here is, and everybody agrees, that we have too few police officers. So they really need more police officers. The problem is that they destroyed it from within, because they had this person who became the chief of police for all of Sweden like 10 years ago, and he was supposed to reorganize everything, and he did that, and he destroyed it. And all the good police chiefs, they were thrown out, and a lot of women and foreigners and gays and all that were suddenly became police chiefs. So what happened? And I know there were a lot of female police officers that couldn't cope with what was going on during Easter. They gave totally wrong instructions to the police. They didn't have enough guns. They didn't have enough, things to help them control these people. And what do the media write now? This week, they have been writing about, well, all this, the police, all that. That cost 43 million kroner, like 4.3 million pounds, dollars. Rasmus Paludan, the cost for him was $4.3 million.
Oh, no, really?
It wasn't him.
That's like our peaceful protests with Antifa and Black Lives Matter that cost $2 billion in damage. And they still on the left and in the fake news media call it peaceful protests, what we went through during our lockdown. But again, this is the one last thing, because it's the exact same playbook as here, except for you guys were faster because your country is smaller, and they didn't hide it early on like they did the first 15 years of the socialist democratic takeover, or I call it the billionaire oligarch takeover, and their minions. But what is education like? Because here I think we've lost 2 generations of kids that have been purposefully miseducated about U.S. history, world history. They don't get taught math, science, logical thinking, reading comprehension. I heard that the reading comprehension in New York